The last day of the month of May 2026 ends with the once in a blue Sagittarius moon because it's the third lunation of the month, and that only happens about every 2.5 years. So that in of itself makes it somewhat special. But what is most fascinating and powerful about this moon is that it not only makes a trine to both Pallas Athena and Vesta, which have to do with protection, guardianship, strategy, wisdom, and healing, at the same time that the moon is conjunct the fixed royal Persian star Antares at 9 degrees and 55 minutes, making this a very, very powerful moment of reckoning around our conditioning from leaders and teachers, and the way that that has shown up in our own minds now as an inner critic, an inner tyrant, a compulsive, angry, or maybe even violent inner voice, with our desire to develop a more compassionate, loving inner teacher and inner guru within. Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm an integrative psychotherapist, and I've been doing that a couple decades, and I make YouTube videos on self-healing approaches that align with the astrological transits. Please see my links below for my free resource guides. So the fixed star Antares is found in the heart of the Scorpion constellation, and therefore is known both as the heart of the Scorpion and the rival of Mars. Rival of Mars, or rival to Mars, because of its similar bright red nature, and its original attributes were generally positive. You just didn't get the designation of being a fixed royal star unless you had some benevolent qualities. But it is a star of extreme power, which can be both tyrannical and dangerous, and also powerful and creative. Other associations are courage and destruction, leadership, mental alertness, death, and healing. And it was considered the Watcher of the West, representing that duality between creation and destruction. Very scorpionic themes and archetypes. It's also considered one of the 4 archangels, Uriel, guarding the difficult transition from life to death and to life again, as well as the transmutation of karma. So while this full moon isn't making any other major aspects, this conjunction, especially wherever Sagittarius is located in your natal birth chart, provides a hyper focus on the expansive, higher-minded Sagittarius intrapsychic motivations towards intensity, drama, passion, and even feelings of mania or obsession, and just general emotionality or hotness that might have been kind of absorbed or even modeled for us by teachers and leaders as we were growing up. It's likely to bring to culmination our deepest desires that may be hidden from public view, Scorpio, or experiences with teachers and leaders in our past that have been hidden from view. But most importantly, it represents those primitive defenses and drives that color our relationships and our choices, including the ones that are made behind closed doors, Scorpio. So symbolically, this fixed star in the heart of the Scorpion is correlated with what I often call the lizard brain. It is our most primitive and vital brain structures related to survival, to protection, and so therefore they can be very base in nature because the reptilian parts of our brains do not care about whether we are happy or moral. They care about whether we make it, whether we survive. And when we act out of a survival impulse, which is the lower essence of the Antares archetype, we will often make choices like harming people emotionally, physically, psychologically, and spiritually, which is why many mundane astrologers are talking about, potential amplification of war or brutality. So it's likely to bring up places in us where we have felt harmed in those ways. And to bring to light, that's literally what the full moon is doing, shining a light where that's been working or not working in our lives, particularly with regard to who we trust for information, who we have determined as teacher, leader, guru, guide, healer in our lives. And I say that because the full moon is ruled by Jupiter, which is still in Cancer at the time of this conjunction with Antares. Jupiter is the teacher guru. Many of us have internalized the voices of a teacher, which Jupiter symbolizes. And the question comes at this time, what can we see more clearly in the light of this full moon? And Sagittarius, which wants us to seek higher mindedness around the early voices that still live in our head that might lead to self-sabotage, voices that are militant, very intense, domineering. These These voices in our head that are actually just reflections of the conditioning that we received from Jupiterian figures in our lives. Now, we typically think of Jupiter as the great benefic and it's Santa Claus archetype, but Jupiter is just really large and expansive. It wants to expand whatever it touches. And when we're young, we put on a pedestal those who are taller than us, bigger than us, older than us, and have more power, regardless of how authentic, true, good, righteous, or moral they may be. So those figures in our lives from our past, or even our current, present adult life, that we might have once put on that pedestal are more easily seen authentically at the moment of this moon. And I say that we can see this more clearly right now and perhaps even be forced to reflect on how the archetypes of our teachers and gurus that might have been more scorpionic in nature, perhaps because they were controlling or they held sexual secrets or they actually even engaged in inappropriate sexual relationships or had weird boundaries. Because of the trine to Athena, she helps us see in the dark. And that goddess asteroid Vesta, who also has a lit flame illuminating places in the dark that Scorpio would rather remain hidden than to be seen. Bernadette Brady, a wonderful astrologer and writer, describes Antares as one that could, when aspects the natal chart, as one that can be the cause of our own self-undoing. She says that the natural theme of the stars can generate incredible success by going through a cleansing life and death experience. She also writes that it can suggest that one seeks intensity even when it's not required. But its mythological symbolism is that it indicates extremes, by choice or not. And both Jupiter and Scorpio can favor extremes. So the higher octave of Antares that we can embrace at the time of the full moon is the capacity to take a stand for what is true and right to us, to own what our greatest motivation is, and take steps forwards to what we are most passionate about. Kind of sloughing off the voices of the past and owning what is true for us, finding our drive and our own inner motivation, and therefore actually achieve great success in becoming our own leader, our own governor, our own teacher and guru. So the invitation here is to separate and unblend from the voices of domination, control, coercion, and harm associated with those which we had trusted, perhaps in our childhood, and become more connected to our inner wisdom, our inner guidance, our inner teacher, and the places in our lives where as adults we feel nourished and truly fed by spiritual knowledge, teachings, wisdom, philosophy, spirituality, religion, and even the law. Those are the interests of Jupiter and Sagittarius. And we can expand our interests at this time, perhaps by trying a new healing modality or reading about different religions or the history of different philosophies, or understanding more about that which we consider the other, because Sagittarius is very interested in literally expanding our horizons, meeting people that look, sound, speak differently than we do, rather than conforming and continuing along in a rigid dogmatic paradigm around philosophy, faith, and spirituality that we might have been raised with. That isn't to say we need to toss away those topics from our past that are serving us well. But in this way, old beliefs are really likely to be fading at the time of the full moon if they're not effective and serving us in a healthy way. And there's that death and rebirth archetype of Antares, an old version of us, has fallen by the wayside at a full moon. It's completing its mission in our lives. And now, as this light shines brightly on what is true for us today and who we trust now, and where in ourselves and what in ourselves do we trust and know now, rather than always looking as we had to as children to other people for guidance and for solutions, for approval and affirmation. Now is the time that we get to receive the burning off of that karma and move forward into a much more mature, an adult version of our truth. So your meditation for this full moon in Sagittarius conjunct Antares is, where am I no longer willing to be blended with the harsh and tyrannical teachers of my past? Your mirror work for the transit is, left eye, deep breath, I trust the deep knowing and wisdom within you. And the mantra for this full moon is, I'm taking a stand for my own truth now. Thank you so much for hitting that like button, for sharing, for hyping, and subscribing. I so appreciate every single one of those gestures. Please check out the videos above, my resources below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.